Hey everyone, Brendan Satter here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to a really special video. I often get asked the question about Holy Grail albums, and while I don't really keep a running list of what it is that I'm looking for, it's one of those things that when you stumble across it, you immediately know that that is a major, huge find. It is the score of the lifetime type thing. And I actually had that happen twice at the same record store visit just recently, and I want to go through both those albums with you. We'll do it here in just a bit, but before we start, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also, leave a comment, hit like, all those things do help support my channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. And of course, if you turn on notifications, you'll never miss an episode, especially with cool ones like this, Holy Grail album finds times two. I mean, it's one thing to find one, it's a whole other thing to find two of them. And I couldn't believe that it happened at the same record store visit. So first one up is glam metal icons Rat. It's their self-titled debut EP. Originally came out in 83. This is actually the 1984 reissue on Atlantic Records after the band had become popular. So following the Out of the Cellar release, the band exploded and the label re-released their self-titled debut, which came out on Time Coast, their own label, independently, put this out and remixed it. And that's what this is here, the Atlantic Records version, but also in tandem with Time Coast. And so the album itself, well, I should really be calling it an EP, but for all intents purposes, it's an album. It's got 6 tracks on it. It does include an earlier version of Back for More that, of course, would later appear on Out of the Cellar, but all 6 of the songs from here, the version of that plus the rest of the stuff on here are only from here. So it's one of those ones where I think this release is essential to a Rat catalog, but this one here is so hard to find. In the late 90s, you could find this thing anywhere. In fact, you can see this is a cutout. And I've actually decided not to change it out because there's a bit of nostalgia for me with that. But this being one of those ones that got cut out and then somebody purchased it, had it in their collection, and I haven't seen one in person in at least more than 20, 25 years because I've been searching for it for about that long. But for the longest time, I wasn't worried about getting one because you could find it anywhere. I had an LP edition of this, which incidentally, there's some differences in the LP editions. If you've got the one that has the black and white, the back side of it, which has this photo on it, not the color, the black and white, that's an original one before Atlantic Records remixed it. So you know you have a remix if you have the color photo, which they put in it to look more like or in line with the glam metal movement that was going on at the time. But also, if you're a European viewer, maybe you've got one of those editions which actually had a 7th track on it, you're in trouble, which would also turn up on Out of the Cellar. But that was only on the European edition. And since I just found that out, I am now going to try and track down one of those with the 7 tracks on it. But I also want one of the original before it got remixed because the LP copy that I have has the color photo. So I know that it is the same as my now CD copy, which I've been dying to get in my collection. And finally being able to do that was just, it's one of those elating type moments where you find it and you just think, there can't be anything better than this right at that moment. And, having that, getting this, and also what was kind of cool too is just this, I had long since known this one here. This is Tawny Katane, the model, who would go on to be or star in 3 music videos by Whitesnake in '87 and really coming to fame at that time. That's where I knew her long before I knew her as the model for that. But I actually never knew that she was the model here as well. She's the legs that are in this. It does state that on the inside of the album, and just kind of a cool all-around thing to tie it all together. When you find something a little extra out like that, it just makes it all that much more. when one Holy Grail find isn't enough, sometimes you score a second one. So in this case, Megadeth, Killing Is My Business, Business Is Good, their 1985 debut album. But this one here is an original on the Combat Records label. So before they got signed and picked up to the major Capitol and it would get reissued, Combat. So this one's very cool because not only is it just the different label with the original art that's on it, it has a different track listing, it has a different sound and mix to it. There's a number of different things about this that are very cool. And while I was telling you that I was able to find copies of the Rat EP well into the 90s before it disappeared, I myself at least have never seen a Combat Records edition, meaning not one that was reissued by Capitol in tandem with it, but actually just a Combat Records edition. And this here goes for, sale online upwards of 50 to 75 to 150 in price. So I got this for a whole $8.99. So this was just a really cool score all the way around on it both. The find of it, the fact that it actually came after finding this one, and the fact that I got such a good deal on it, just super, super cool. I was, walking on water, walking on the moon, whatever you call it, that day, finding both of these releases. So the thing with this release here is it's got 8 tracks on it, but on later versions of this, there was an issue with the cover song, These Boots, which full name of that is These Boots Are Made for Walking, and it was made famous by Nancy Sinatra. Megadeth does its cover, and it was kind of a weird, in my opinion, song for them to have chosen to do, but they do it. And Dave Mustaine altered the lyrics, and the original writer of the song, Lee Hazelwood, had issue with it. And around 1995, he asked that Megadeth remove the song or change it in some way or whatever. And so they removed it at that point. Now, they would reissue the album itself in 2002 with different album art. So Dave Mustaine was never happy with this artwork. He's often said how terrible he thought this was. The story goes that the label lost the original sketch that Dave Mustaine did. And so they just took a stab at what they thought it was supposed to be and did this. And I don't know why the band couldn't get them to correct it, rectify it, not sign off on it. I don't know. I guess that's the nature of being a brand new band on a brand new label. But this is more in keeping with what the sketch was that Dave Mustaine had originally done. In fact, I think there's a copy of that original sketch inside here. And so we got new art on this. And in order that they could put the song These Boots back on, they had to censor out the altered lyrics on it. So there's bleeps that go across it, which for me, extremely annoying. And I actually thought that's the way the original one was, and it's not. So none of that's on this one, which fantastic. They're just on this one here. But I guess because they decided to do that to it, they moved that song to the last position, which it wasn't on the original album. In fact, it was track number 4. So as I said, a different track listing, a different order to it. It's modified, but for this release here, they weren't very happy with the original production and mix, so this got remixed. So all different types of factors play into the release of it here being different, and this was the first version of it that I got. That being 2002. And I didn't realize it was actually such a long time frame when they did it again. And they did this version in 2018 called The Final Kill. And again, more changes were made to it. So now for this one, not only does it get a new remix beyond this remix here, but in order to, I guess, maybe more restore, but to be able to have the song These Boots on here in full version without bleeps, without it being edited in any way, shape, or form, Dave Mustaine re-recorded the vocals without the modified lyrics. So it's a new version of the song, but again, it's still in last place on here. So there's bonus tracks and stuff to both of these versions, making them worthwhile to have, but they're different mixes of it, and then there's different vocals on that one track here. And we know that Dave Mustaine had gone in and done that to the catalog as a whole. So we've got these two versions, and when you throw on the original, there are 3 versions of Killing Is My Business, Business Is Good. In fact, there's a 4th one, really, because in the later 90s, when they removed the song from it, there's that version, and of course, the version that is the Combat Capitol Records. So you could collect an endless amount of this album here if you wanted to, but I now feel like I have what I need. The Holy Grail, the last piece of the puzzle, for me at least in terms of Megadeth, which I'm a huge fan of, was I didn't have the original version of this album, the original sound on the original label, all those sort of things. So getting it here, having it here, and it's just everything about this is cool when you look on the inside of this. I like the layout of these old albums and how they were done. I don't mind the sort of cheesy 80s album art. Remember, this is 1985. For me, it goes hand in hand, and that's how I remember the album. So do I think that this album art is better? Yeah, certainly. But this to me is 90s or later on era album type art. This is what screams 1980s. And so love it or hate it, cheesy or not, it is the album cover that I associate with this. So I certainly want it. And so there you go, man. I can't believe that I got 2 Holy Grail album finds in one day. My mind was blown. I walk in the store, and this was Sound Exchange, and Anthony holds this thing up and said, hey, little birdie told me you've been keeping an eye out, you're looking for this, and he had put it aside for me. And then he said, I just got this big buy-in, you better check the metal section. And I found this within it. And I actually walked out with a number of other killer albums that I wanted, that I needed for the collection. But these 2 were the Holy Grail finds, and tack this on to my Motley Crue Too Fast for Love Leather Records edition. You can see it there behind me. You can also see Guns N' Roses' original album cover for the Appetite for Destruction. And a while back, I talked about the Holy Grail find of Guns N' Roses Live Like a Suicide. So in just the last 2 years, I've made some mega scores of my Holy Grail finds. And while I, again, don't keep a list because it's not always present in my mind, and I don't really want to pay exorbitant prices for these things, because for me, it's about the hunt and the find and the score of it at a reasonable price, even when you can get something like I did this Megadeth for $8.99. But I walked out with both of these albums here for next to nothing, and couldn't believe that I got these when they go for so much online. So 2 killer Holy Grail scores. I love it. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'm sure you guys have your own Holy Grail scores. What was one of your most recent ones that just really made your day? Let me know all about it. I'd love to hear about it. All right, everyone. Take care. Have a good one. I'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.